Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. Today, we're going to talk about the bugs. We're going to talk about pathogens. We're going to talk about those guys that invade us and cause us all kinds of health problems. You might be thinking, well, Chip, I don't live in a third world country. I don't, skip barefoot through poo fields. It's how in the world am I going to get a bug? Well, you do. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, again, in our view, if you look at the cause of most disease, well, let's walk through this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so God is a perfect engineer, and what I mean by that is God made every cell pretty perfect, meaning that cell will function and click along. But if something begins to happen to that cell, or if it begins to, let's say, get messed up, it's just going to divide and form a new perfect self. And that guy is going to do the same thing. So cells are always striving toward perfect, right? So perfect function, perfect form, as good as they can get. They're always clawing like for perfect, right? So what does that mean to us? Well, that means that every cell in you is clawing toward perfect. So all your blood cells, all your bone cells, all your organs, every cell in you is clawing toward perfect function. And it doesn't really matter how old you are or how sick you are or how messed up you are. That's still a fact. That's just the way that you're designed. So in order for us to, we all should be doing this, right? So we should be healthy and robust, and it should be really hard to get us sick, and we shouldn't have many health problems. But yet that's not the case, is it? Right? So a lot of us, suffer from disease. We suffer from chronic disease, so we have all kinds of, let's say, health problems that are maybe not necessary, right? Because it takes some kind of cause, right? So if everything in you is striving toward perfect function and we're all doing this, it takes some agent, some causal agent to cause that, right? So what's going on there? What is that causal agent? Well, there are lots of, let's say, causal agents, and certainly there's things in our environment, you could live over a lead mine. You could, be holding uranium-232 all the time. And that's definitely going to cause you to do this, not this. You could be allergic to stuff. You could have stuff like mold or something, in your environment. Well, that's kind of a pathogen. We'll talk about that later. But you could have stuff in your environment that you're allergic to. And again, that can cause you to have degraded function because your immune system is working very hard to help you defend against that stuff. But by far and away, the thing that we see that's wrong with most people that is, let's say, the underlying cause why they're doing this, not this, is some kind of pathogen, is some kind of a bacteria, fungus, virus, or parasite, a worm, right? So we see these in a lot of people as we analyze them. And again, they're directly tied to many, many disease states. And I'll walk you through this because this is a new one. And I just wrote a blog about this. So if you go to Chip Talks Health, you can find this blog about breast cancer. And it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So in what world would you think, well, breast cancer is associated with a gut, bug? But it turns out that it certainly can be. And here's how it works. So these pathogens infect us. And when they infect us, they consume resources from our immune system, okay? And one of the things that these pathogens can do is they can mess with certain enzymes. And messing with these certain enzymes will cause you to convert estrogen into the metabolite that looks like the underlying cause for breast cancer. Okay? So your H. pylori infection could be the underlying cause of your breast cancer indication, is what I'm telling you. And certainly it is the case that breast cancer, the underlying cause, is caused by chronic inflammation, in addition to these estrogens converging to this estradiol metabolite, which looks to be the underlying cause. So what I'm saying is, again, if you've got some pathogenic infection, if you've got some bug in you, that lowers your immune system, and that also consumes resources from your immune system, and that makes you very vulnerable to more severe disease, okay? So let's walk this through and how it works a little bit. because I think this is, it's valuable information, and hopefully you guys can hang with me. I'll try not to glaze your eyes too much in how we talk about this. But there's all different manner of, let's say, pathogens around. If you just look at the pathogens on your skin, so you've got strep, you've got staph, you've got lots of pathogens on your skin, okay? And we all have this idea that we're like the boy in the bubble, right? So we're like the boy in the bubble. We got this bubble of protection around us. And that if somehow, one of these things gets inside of us, like I just licked my staph and strep, my skin, that, oh no, we're done now. We're going to get whatever it is. So I just licked myself, so I'm likely going to get staph and strep. No, it's not how it works. COVID worms its way into my bubble, and I've got COVID now, and oh no, I'm going to get sick with it, and that's just, it's over. No, that's not how it works. Okay. So I'm a fan of Star Trek. I like to use the Star Trek analogies, and I love the idea of shields, right? So the concept of shields. And so you can think of your immune system more as a concept of Star Trek shields. All right. So if you're going into a bunch of pathogens, you want as strong, you want your shields at 100%, and you want them on, right? Okay. So and this is the way kind of our immune system works. And there's definitely an off and an on to your immune system, or let's say a more powerful and less powerful to your immune system. Now you work this, you turn on your immune system to full power when you don't eat. Okay. You turn it off or turn it down when you eat. When you eat, you turn your immune system down for 5 hours. 5 hours after you eat, she comes back to full power. What does this mean? Well, up here, I can kill cancer. I've got 2 ways to fight cancer in my body. Here, I've got none. Okay. So, immune system is something that's very important for us to understand how to work. But when we're in a fasted state, which means that we're 5 hours past our last meal, we come on to full power. We have a very strong immune system. But if you do like you've been told by the USDA, and you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then you're basically going to be in a degraded immune state most of the day. So you're not going to be 5 hours past that last meal. Your immune system is going to be degraded, and you're going to be super vulnerable to pathogens. Okay. So it's like flying into the Klingons with your shields down. And as I flying into the Klingons with my shields down, stuff's going to get me, right? And so most of what gets us now, and a lot of stuff will get inside of us, right? So it gets inside of us, and our immune system is just can kill a bunch of stuff, even when we're in low shields or no shields. Okay. So even when you're in a fed state, when your immune system is kind of low, you still got a lot of ability to kill stuff, but some stuff is going to get you. And again, if we're in this degraded state, we're a lot weaker to these pathogens and these pathogens infecting us. So what we see in most people are 2, let's say, classes of pathogens. So one are parasites, so hook, round, and pinworms, and also tapeworms. And these are the same things that our mammals get. So if you have a dog, if you have a cat, if you have a horse, if you have a pig, if you have a cow, they all get hook, round, and pinworm. And, every 6 months or 3 months, we're deworming those animals. Well, guess what? We're susceptible to the same things, and we never deworm ourselves, okay? And we'll talk about what that means in just a second. But we're susceptible because of our eating behavior, and we lower our shields, and we get these things just like our mammals do. So we see a lot of hook, round, and pinworm in people. The other thing that we see in a lot of people is something called H. pylori, okay? So pylori is a bacteria that will invade the gut. And pylori is what is thought to be responsible for ulcers. He is the causal for stomach cancer. If you have burning or upset when you eat certain foods, like up in your throat and stuff, then you absolutely have H. pylori. So you have H. pylori, and it's something that you need to address. Now, if you have hook, round, and pinworm and H. pylori, so once they've got you, it's really hard to get rid of. Your immune system has great difficulty fighting these guys off once they get you hooked. And in fact, they win, meaning that they'll proliferate and continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, even with very robust immune response. So once you've got these guys, you've got them, and you've got to do something to address them. Okay. But let's talk about what they do. Okay. So and it doesn't really matter what the bug is. If, we'll go with the gut bugs because, that's pylori and these hookworm and pinworms. But once, so one of these guys has to get in you in some way, right? So he's got to get in you in some way, and he's got to, find a home. He's got to basically hook to tissue or find a home in you. And then this is the biggest thing. He's got to defeat your immune system. In order for him to stay alive, he has to defeat your immune system. Now that takes a trick. That's really hard to do. Your immune system, even in degraded low shield state, you've got a lot of ways to try and kill this guy. You've got a lot of stuff that you can, throw at him and begin to try to kill him. But again, they're sophisticated. They're smart. They know how to rewire stuff. They know how to work around stuff. And that's exactly what they do. And once they have you, once they've beaten your immune system once, they can do it again and again and again. But if you're in this shape, so if your shield's down, you're a lot easier to beat than if your shield's up. Okay. So, you might get a hookworm and pinworm infection, even if you're in a very strong immune state, but it's not going to go very far, very fast. Right. So your immune system is going to help you beat it or, try to beat it or keep it at bay. Not like this. Free run, right? So, but this is what happens. So as these guys beat you in a micro environment, what happens is your immune system is obviously involved trying to kill them. Your immune system requires resources. Those resources it's like a pool of resources that you have called mesenchymic stem cells, okay? This pool of resources is responsible for red blood cells, white blood cells, lymphocytes, immune mediators, all kinds of stuff. And now guess what you're doing? Because you've got an infection. You're stepping on the gas and you're sucking a lot of these resources down this lymphocyte path, down your immunity path, down the path that you need to be able to create immune mediators to fight this thing, okay? So you begin to, let's say, suck up more stem cells than is appropriate for your infection. And as that happens, again, you have a certain rate of stem cells that you make. As you begin to call for more stem cells, you begin to pull things from bone. So you begin to get some osteoporosis. What happens next is all that stuff has to move around in blood. So everything that you're trying to bring to the point of attack to try to kill this hookworm and pinworm or H. pylori, that has to move around in blood, right? And again, as you kill stuff, you clean it up in blood. So your blood becomes thicker. So in one of these infections or chronic inflammation, you're going to have higher blood pressure. It's just going to happen because you got more crap in your blood. So it's thicker and gooier. The next thing that's going to happen is your blood has to be filtered. So that thick, gooey blood has to be filtered, and the kidneys do that. The kidneys get tired. They kind of start giving up, right? And if it's bad enough, they'll start saying, I think I'll have type 2 diabetes today. Blah, blah. So they'll start throwing off type 2 diabetic markers. All kinds of things can happen when your kidneys get tired from filtering goopy blood. The last thing that happens, well, the liver kind of gets involved at the same time that the kidneys get involved. But the last thing that happens is the heart. And it's easy to move thin, like water-like substances through a tube. It's way harder to move things like syrup through a tube. And that's exactly what your blood gets like, is syrupy. So your heart begins to become stressed because every time it beats, it's got to move syrup through a tube rather than water through a tube. And all of this is caused by a simple infection. So you wonder, did grandma die of a heart attack? Again, God's a perfect engineer. Your heart just doesn't fail. So, she might have died of a consequence of her heart stopping, but her heart just didn't fail. It just didn't give up. She likely had a 30-year hookworm and pinworm infection. Did, dad die of kidney failure? No, dad died of a 20 or 30-year bacterial or hookworm and pinworm infection, because kidneys don't just fail. A heart doesn't just fail. Okay, so you guys beginning to see kind of what we're seeing here? That it's, again, if I'm in heart failure and I have kidney failure, well, what is my pathogenic profile? Do I have H. pylori and hookworm and pinworm? And if I do, guess what happens when I get rid of the H. pylori or hookworm and pinworm? Because God's a perfect engineer. You heal. You will heal. Your body will heal if we get rid of the insult, if we get rid of the thing that's causal. So isn't that cool? Isn't that neat? Now, how many diseases are associated with this? Many diseases. Again, breast cancer is kind of one that's associated with this. Well, if breast cancer is, then any estrogen associated cancer likely is. So it just goes on and on and on, the amount of diseases that can be linked back to some kind of infection. Chronic inflammation is caused by some infection. Chronic inflammation, 80% of us die of. So if you look at, the biggest picture stuff, well, it's, I had kidney failure. Well, why? Because of chronic inflammation. Well, why? Because of some infection. All right. So what can we do to protect ourselves? Because we live in this world of, and if you want to go spiritual, I'll kind of go down the spiritual path real quick, because I think this is pretty cool. Your body is a temple. Have you corrupted your body? Have you allowed, some other critter to live inside of you? Well, that's kind of a corruption of my temple, I think. I don't want any critters. I don't want fleas and ticks living inside me. I don't know about you, but we're not to the point yet where we fully understand how to do this. So we're still in science. We're still thinking we need a microbiome, that it's somehow helpful. Well, no, it's not. Again, with our diet right now, it is helpful. So it does give you some benefit. But it's not the way you're really designed to work at highest function. At highest function, you don't need fleas and ticks to help you function, right? So, yeah, this is spiritual to me, So it's a spiritual battle almost that we're, if you look at it this way, there are things of the earth that want to take anything on the earth back to things of the earth. So you can think of that, thing that gets run over or hit, in the road, right? So you drive by, today and it's just died and it's pretty fresh, and you drive by the next day and it's kind of deflated, or it might be, a little bit bloated, and then the next day it's a little deflated. But, a couple of weeks go by and it's kind of just fur, right? It's just kind of not there anymore. Well, what happened to it? Well, again, things of the earth degraded it. So it got bacterias and funguses and viruses and all these things. And those things begin to break it down and degrade it and take it back to the earth, right? And that's what the earth is always trying to do. It's trying to break down things and degrade things and pull them back to raw elements and things of the earth. Well, again, it's trying to do that to you right now, right? So the only thing that keeps us kind of, safe is our immune system, is our, flow of electrons, is our VIV, is our being alive. But that can be demonstrated in, your immune response, okay? So here in our communications and Chip Talks Health and everything that I'm going to try to teach and talk to you guys about, I'm going to be trying to teach you guys about how to have a more robust immune system, how to defend ourselves better. And then we'll also be talking about, once we have something, so once we get infected with one of these pathogens, what can we do to get rid of it? Because again, it's likely causing a lot of symptoms that we haven't associated with the pathogen that are going to be really cool when we get rid of the pathogen and all those symptoms go away, right? So that's what we're all about here. But it all kind of starts with this understanding that, in medical science, we don't even consider right now the third party. We don't consider that there might be some bug in the middle of everything. So if if you're a physician and somebody comes in and they're, you can tell by their tests that their creatine is high and that they're, likely having kidney failure, you're never going to consider that there might be some pathogen involved, because it's just not in your thinking yet. It's not in your train of thought. It's not in your SOPs. It's not in the medical system. And yet it's truth. That is likely exactly what's happening. But you're just going to go by your SOPs, and your SOPs say to, antibiotics or, kind of whatever you do for that kidney problem, but you're just going to follow your SOPs, and you're likely not going to ever get to the cause of that disease. So we like to say we treat the cause, and that's what we're trying to do. We're certainly trying to educate you about the cause. Now, how do you treat for these pathogens? You're going to say, well, Chip, it's antibiotic resistance, and these bugs are smart, and they've figured out pharma, and they can completely make their way around most modern antibiotics. And oh no, and yeah, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, what are we going to do? Well, it turns out, again, God's a perfect engineer, and God built you a perfect medical system. It's right outside your window. It's right outside your front door. And bacteria and funguses and viruses and parasites never become resistant to nature. So that's the big thing. And that's the big kind of trick that we have, or magic trick that we have, is, how can we help you sort of with these very severe, let's say, disease states? Well, because we understand that the disease state, as described, is just a symptom, and that there's something else pulling function down. And if we understand what that is and we treat that thing, guess what? All your symptoms go away. Yep. So anyway, that's some information about parasites and pathogens and kind of what they do and how they're involved in our day-to-day, let's say, immune system and day-to-day pathology of disease, because they're deeply involved. What can you do? You've got so much power. You have so much power that you don't realize that you have. So intermittent fasting or fasting will help with your immune system. So if you have cancer, everyone who has cancer should be intermittent fasting. And it's just because of the robustness of your immune system, and you'll be helping your body fight the cancer. Whereas if you eat all the time, you don't. Okay. So there's just all these little tips and tricks and biohacks that we have here that we will continue to put out through Chip Talks Health. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you back next week better for another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. See you guys. Bye-bye.